There's Jim Ratcliffe. Last year increased his wealth by £2,000 million. So you can understand why he needs to cut staff at his Manchester United Football Club, which he jets to from his home in Monaco, which he moved to from this country. A place where he reportedly saved £4 billion in tax, which could have gone to providing healthcare and education for the people of this country, instead of buying a share in that football club, which has done nothing but fail ever since he took over. Still, he made £2,000 million in the year to date, so I guess he's doing okay. And that's the reason, I maintain, that people are going to, that people in America are voting for Donald Trump, and that people in this country are considering putting their all in with reform, because they've tried everything else and nothing works for them. And just because those parties, Trump and Reform, just because they rail against the supposed elite, doesn't mean to say that they are not the elite, because that is exactly who they are. I mean, the funding for the Reform Party is pretty much all billionaires. The New York Times did an investigation about that. Nigel Farage's Insurgent Reform UK has attracted more than a dozen donors from Britain's once dominant Conservative Party, underlining the threat that the Tories face from the right-wing populist party that models itself on President Trump's MAGA movement. In total, Reform UK raised £4.75 million last year, a third of which came from former donors to the Conservatives. So if you think that you're voting for Reform as opposed to the Conservatives, they're the same people. The New York Times analysed the donations that Reform UK reported to Britain's campaign finance watchdog last year. They show how wealthy backers are helping drive Reform UK's rise as a political force in Britain. Many of them could gain significantly from its policies if it came to power. About 40% of Reform's donations came from those who have openly questioned climate change or have investments in fossil fuel or other climate-polluting industries, which gives you a clue, perhaps, as to why the Reform MPs and councillors keep going on and on and on and on and on about net zero. And there is no such thing as climate change. And let's drill, baby, drill. It's because that's where the money's from. Jeremy Hosking, former Conservative Party donor. His trading firm has fossil fuel investments worth more than £350 million. He donated £250,000 to Reform last year. More than 2/3 of Reform's donations have come from millionaires or multi-millionaires. More than half of Reform's donations came from those with homes in low-tax countries or with business interests in offshore jurisdictions. They donated a combined £2.5 million. They say, while it's unsurprising that many political donors are wealthy, a remarkable number of Reform's millionaire donors used to be Conservatives, the establishment that Farage and his party have long fashioned to rail against. And Labour has wealthy individual donors too, but the majority of Labour's funding comes from union donations. See, that's the difference with Labour, to me, between the Tories and Reform. The Tories and Reform have a small handful of super-rich individuals who give them the bulk of the money that they get. The Labour Party has millions of people who give a small amount. Which of the above do you think might be more interested in acting in the interests of the majority rather than the small handful of super-rich individuals that provide their wealth? It goes on and on. You can read it yourself, the New York Times. But there's absolutely no point, because people have already made their mind up, because they tell it like it is, whatever that means.